I bring a sword that contains its own medicine, sour milk that cureth the body. Prepare to meet God, the omnifarious believing, thyself the living truth. Die not to spare, but that the world may perish. Having suffered pleasure and pain, gladly dost thou deny the things of existence, for freedom of desire. Desire is the conception I, and induces thou. Isolation in ecstasy. Final inducement is enough, but procreate thou alone. Salvation shall be, unsay all things. True wisdom cannot be expressed by articulate sounds. The language of fools is words. In the labyrinth of the alphabet the truth is hidden. It is one thing repeated many times, confined within the limits or rationalism. No guess has been answered, O Zeus. Thou art fallen into the involuntary accident of birth and rebirth, a partial sexuality entangled in the morass of sensual law. Verily the Creator speaks, I know not what I do. And in this living nightmare, where all is cannibalism, why dost thou deny thyself? The necessity was a deliberate serving of its own pleasure, becoming more alien. Remoteness from self is pain and precocious creation. Through this remoteness from self, thou dost not hear thine own call to be potentially thyself. The living self does not habitate. There is no truth in thy wish. Pleasure wearies of thee. Ecstatic fulfillment of ecstasy, is it asking too much? Alas, the smallness of human desire. O Zeus, thou shalt live in millions of forms, and every conceivable thing shall happen unto thee. Remember, these senses are that which thou hast desired. What is all thought but immorality of the senses that has become sex? What is desired of the self is given eventually. The desire is sufficient. The self will pleasure in all things. There is only one sense, the sexual. There is only one desire, procreation. I am the cause, thou the effect. I am all that I conceive, not for all time, but at some time. I multiply I is creation, the sexual infinity. Complex desire is the further creation of different desire, not the realization of particular desire. O Zeus, thou shalt die of extreme youth. Death is a disease of fear. Cast into demoniacal molds, human nature is the worst possible nature. The degenerate need partners. Dispense with that part of thyself. Give unto the other all thy weaknesses. It is the suffering half. Pain awaits her who is sentimentally desirous. But I say thou couldst create this body anew. Awake! The time has come for the new sexualities. Then would be occasion for greater pleasures. To improve the species, ye humans must love one another. Thou art that which thou dost prefer. Conscious desire is the negation of possession, the procrastination of reality. Make thy desire subconscious. The organic is creative, impulse to will. Let thy highest virtue be insatiety of desire. Brave self-indulgence and primeval sexualism. Thought is the negation of knowledge. Purge thyself of belief. Live like a tree walking. Take no thought of good or evil. Reality exists, but not in consciousness of such. This phenomenon I is noumenal and neither. Thou art the way. Let this be thy one excuse. I pleasured myself. Thine eye is envious of satisfaction, yet none devotes herself to reality. Whoever learneth much, unlearneth all sentimental and small desires. The great experience. Seduce thyself to pleasure. There is only one sin, suffering. There is only one virtue, the will to self-pleasure. Finality is reached when ye have learned to digest everything. Only where there is necessity is there death, dispense with all means to an end. There is nothing higher than joyous sensation. Eternal self, these millions of bodies I have outworn. Think not the words I wish, say not the words I will. Respect thy body, it will again become thy parents. Fear nothing, strike at the highest. Go where thou fearest most. How canst thou become great among humans? Cast thyself forth. Of this event genius is the successful effort of memory. Break thy commandments, be lawless unto all dogma. For I love thee, O self, for I love thee, O mine. How could I fail to be agog for originality and self-love? Never yet has procreation with another been satisfactory, for mine I is worthy of the self, and alone knows what is righteousness. Verily, I tell you, good and evil are one and the same. It is but the distance thou hast reached. Will unto self-love, the unexhausted, the procreative of ecstasy. Where there is life, there is will unto pleasure. However paradoxical the manifestation, employment, devotion to art, all morality, and love of the opposite sex should be ignored. I would counsel closed ears, for those who contain the great ideas have no opinions. Who doth know what her own subconscious contains? Experience is ignorance, the necessity of reoccurrence. The highest creations are those that harmonize the most incongruous things. Art is the truth we have realized of our belief. Know much of life. Should death give you its secret? Self-suggestion to will. This is the great teacher, not dogma. What the world reveres most, treat with utmost contempt. There is no lasting peace. Ye eternally fall in love with the new thing of belief. Embrace reality by imagination. What is true has no argument, in that it is volition. She who can truthfully say, I believe in nothing but myself, is in all things realized. The human will is by thought, by the death posture, a simulation of death, by the utter negation of thought, i.e. the prevention of desire from belief, and the functioning of all consciousness through the sexuality. Body is allowed to manifest spontaneously and is impervious to reaction. Will to pleasure is the basic function, underlying all activity, whether conscious or not, and whatsoever the means. Will is transition, the painful process of transmigration, the labor of birth and death. Volition to supersede a thing is inability to realize the living self, for whatever is attained is but the reawakening of an earlier experience of body. What is I in the extent of its conscious habitation? A weak desire, a memory governed by ethics and ignorant of its own bodies. Therefore, that which is indeliberate is the more vital, and is will. Discarded knowledge is the sexuality and becomes law. She who absorbs the bodies of others is ever projected, for she acquires the extent of her body. Self-love is the paradox of I. Verily, greater courage hath none than to satisfy the unexpected desire by self-pleasure. For this reason, that when the desire again reacts, to operate in the ego, the suffering shall be ecstatic. How do I know? Not by farcical dialogue with self, but through contact with its undulations. Are we not ever standing on our own volcano? Art thou the hidden wish for madness and hysteric love? O thou untamed within, thou shalt not lose virtue, for thee I will not domesticate while generating. O idiocy, where is that path where I may wander naked in frenzy? a trespasser against all things reasonable. Knowledge alone is transitory, the illusion subsequent to I desire all things. Eternal without beginning is self, without end am I. There is no other power in substance. The ever-changing modifications and diversities we see are the results of forgetfulness, misinterpreted by nightmare senses. When the self again desires, then I only and nothing else shall remain. Renouncing everything else, take shelter in that self-love, which incites the functions into the bold freedom from necessity am I. Virtue and vice shall cease. Self-illumination am I, the procreatrix of this universe, indomitable in body, born of the vaster truth I made. When the eyes are shut, the world certainly does not exist. O chaos! Is there no greater joy than flagellation? What is self but cosmos? What is I but chaos? I who transcend ecstasy by ecstasy meditating. This constant ecstasy I indraw from self-creation. All desire is for unity. All things return to their earliest functions. All humans are servile to the great unconsciousness of their purpose and desire. The I thinks the self doth. There is no salvation from desire, neither day nor night does it cease its lengthy procreation of cause and effect, penetrating all things inexplicably. Endless are its elements, and nothing whatsoever escapes its embrace but its own self-love. Should I fear my I? What further use shall I give my sexuality? Verily it is always speaking for me. This I, non-resistant to the self, becomes irresistible. Human is something that has resurrected from an archetype, previous desire gone to worm, all conceptions predetermine their degeneration, or supersedure by degrees of morality. Verily, a new sexuality shall be mine, unnecessary to degenerate or surpass. To give it a name, I call it the unmodified sexuality. Without a name, it shall be conscious of all desire. Thus no ecstasy shall escape me. Its wisdom shall be dreams of self-love, vibrating all the manifestation. I am she who pleasures non-morally. I teach you the glad death of all things. To awake the disembodied astrals, in my life my memory lived numerous remotenesses which were once me. My belief reached associations that outstripped all morality and rationalism. My eye chanced much with the self, certain is it. I come not to repent, nor seek a partner, yea, my will conquered faith, and sincerely laughed at every righteousness. Now that my individual consciousness dissolves, to saturate again with its furthermost desires, to form the new body, O mighty death. Remember at the time of incarnating my utmost immorality, my frightening madnesses, my jesting sins, my satyr caresses, my grotesque concubine of chaos. Remember, O death, my frenzied longing that has no name. Oh, forget my first kiss of love, now withered as a fallen leaf. Make this my sexuality complete, all-knowing, so that I may again procreate the lusty self-love in isolation. O time of nothing now, am I ashamed to admit parentage? What I generate is future body to become. Steel and poison are my friends, steel for self, poison for vermin, for myself diseased. I will this fruitful violence, my death kiss, thus to realize my hyper commands. Greater love hath no human than self-destruction in pleasure. Death is a transfiguration of life, the coming forth of the suppressed. Ideas of the past and future bodies. From these, the new body is determined and parentage selected by the laws of attraction. Death is the manufacture of life. If fate is life, then death is the hazard to alter fate. All things are subject to resurrection. I come, the changing word that destroys religion. a vortex wind that shall jest in temples again, a reveler in the marshaled order of the sexes, the mad anarch of desires, the wild satyr of wolfish kisses. Once again to earth, O thou whirlwind of desire, thou drunken breath of ribald lightning, my vampire chalice of ecstasy. What now am I after resurrection? Sinful despair of magic? I am the iconoclast of Logos, the sun satyr of chaos, thunder and lightnings, ecstatic laughter that reverberates and awakens, a clouded vista of abyss wherein to visit naked my vampire self, wherein to write a cryptic language of my sexes, that I am the key, I am the great cipher of love and hate knotted, the sphinx surviving, never sufficiently imagined. I am the grotesque refractions of form and self, the bitter purgative called death, constant in metamorphosis.